9 years after his Ford Raptor turned a burger stand parking lot into a crime scene, Suge Knight popped onto a prison Zoom call, glanced at the judge, and said 2 words nobody expected: "I'll settle." The on-the-spot deal, $1.5 million split among the widow and daughters of Terry Carter, killed a retrial that would have started this week and left Knight defending himself without a lawyer rolling stone, yet long before typed signatures and prison webcams. The man once branded hip-hop's boogeyman walked into a hotel corridor and discovered that Ice Cube, the so-called college kid turned rapper, could swing harder than rumor ever gave him credit for. That single clash ignited 3 decades of feuds, lawsuits, and headline whiplash, right up to Knight's last-minute about face. So how did a South Central prodigy leave gang life, outpunch above the law, outright common, and still stare down Suge Knight when even record execs carried bodyguards? Let's rewind. Ice Cube's legend starts with a lie, someone else's. A neighborhood hustler showed up at his family's door spinning a story so slick that Cube's mother handed over $20. When Cube heard rage eclipsed reason, he and a friend grabbed guns and marched to the man's house intent on payback. The dealer wasn't home. Cube calls that unlocked door a blessing. Had it opened, he says, "I wouldn't be the Cube you're listening to today." That near miss framed everything that came next. No bluffing, no empty verses, and no fear of consequences. But destiny had an even bigger test waiting, in the hulking frame of Marion Suge Knight. By the early 90s, Suge wasn't just powerful, he was a campfire monster story. Record contracts were negotiated in back alleys, and rumors of headbutts in boardrooms traveled faster than mixtapes. But at an industry convention, DJ Premier watched a crowd part like Moses' Sea. Cube and Knight were squared up, fists already cocked. Premier swears Cube wasn't punking out at all. The moment mattered because Knight's reputation was built on people folding. Yet here was Cube, fresh off NWA, no major label muscle behind him, throwing hands. Knight backed away, dignity bruised. The street grapevine erupted, the boogeyman bled. Today, that same Knight live streams opinions on his Collect Call with Suge Knight podcast, dialing in from RJ Donovan Correctional and retelling old wars for clickbait. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. Last week, he traded war stories for settlement paperwork, agreeing to pay the Carter family instead of facing a jury without longtime attorney David Kenner. Rolling Stone Knight may have learned the price of pride, but Cube's resolve was forged long before that hallway brawl. Most South Central rap tales start with the absence of a father. Cube's features a fortress. Hosea Jackson Sr. worked a steady job, enforced curfews, and taught his son that courage meant protecting your own. Add music's escape hatch, and Cube could exit gang life without ditching the survival instinct. Then came the lynch mob, a crew equal parts street activist and security detail. They marched with Cube, performed with Cube, and when necessary threw down for Cube, which is why Pomona's above the law should have read the room before mouthing off. They didn't, and fists soon followed. April 1990, Anaheim Celebrity Theater. Cube sat backstage giving a magazine interview when Cold 187 ambushed with verbal smoke. "You trying to play me like a buster?" Minutes later, a 2-piece combo sent Cube crashing through a dressing room door. He got up swinging, fight broke, security swarmed, score no knockout, respect earned. 3 months later at New York's New Music Seminar, the sequel proved uglier, lynch mob versus above the law in a hotel hallway melee that left mirrors shattered and rumors louder than bass drums. Cube's takeaway: if talk gets reckless, throw the first jab. Next to learn that lesson was a rising Chicago poet named Common. Common's 1994 single, I Used to Love H.E.R., critiqued hip-hop's shift toward gangsta cliches. West Coast ears heard shade. Cube fired back on Mac 10's West Side Slaughterhouse, Galbiarn calling out Common without naming him. Common responded with the Bay and D and U, flipping Cube's own bars. In the immortal words of one, a B is a beat. Cube sharpened a reply so savage he still grins describing it, but 1997 changed the energy. Pac and Biggie were gone. Headlines read Rap War. Minister Louis Farrakhan called a summit in Chicago. Cube and Common shook hands, agreeing dead friends were enough casualties. No diss track ever dropped, though diplomacy won, until Cube felt someone jacked his hook. Working on the Friday soundtrack, Cube begged Cypress Hill for their unreleased single, Throw Your Set in the Air. They passed. Weeks later, the soundtrack featured Cube's Friday, with a chorus many thought sounded familiar. Cypress felt robbed, Be Real unloaded on No Rest for the Wicked. Around the same time, LA artist Solo claimed he caught Cube at a stoplight, threw punches, and walked off with Cube's chain. He later waved that chain on stage at a Cypress Hill show, crowd roaring while camera flashes turned the moment into West Coast mythology. Even for Cube, the escalation felt radioactive. Meetings were held, lawyers looped in, and eventually the feud cooled. Yet collateral damage sometimes hit people who weren't even in the booth. TV host Dee Barnes merely aired 2 interviews back-to-back, NWA dissing Cube, then Cube clapping back on the set of Boys in the Hood. Edit complete, ratings secured, except Dr. Dre saw the broadcast, blamed Barnes, and lost control at a Def Jam party. Witnesses say he slammed her against a wall, kicked her ribs, chased her into a restroom, and kept punching. Lawsuits followed, settled quietly, but the message rang out. 1990s rap beef could maim anyone in its blast radius. Cube watched the drama swirl, noting how a single segment could trigger bloodshed, reinforcing his belief that the fastest way through conflict was head-on, not sideways. Fast forward some years and those parking lot instincts show up in boardrooms and courtrooms. Knight now hosts a podcast from prison, dropping claims that Dre once put a price on his head and reminiscing about the day Cube stood 10 toes down. The Carter family, meanwhile, waited 9 years for restitution. Knight juked negotiations, demanded a jury, then caved on Zoom once Judge Thomas Long confirmed trial would begin without attorney Kenner. Cube fights a different rumor mill, screenshots suggesting secret MAGA alliances. In late 2024, he vented, "They got me messed up. I'm not MAGA, never was." He doubles down in each interview, framing himself as politically independent, more interested in black business initiatives than campaign slogans. The internet stays skeptical. Cube shrugs and keeps building his Big Three basketball league. Through it all, that Anaheim swing and New York scuffle echo. The college kid rapper who exposed NWA's accounting, sparred with Suge Knight, and outrode his critics still moves the culture, sometimes by action, sometimes by absence. A parking lot crashout nearly made Ice Cube a teenage killer. One hotel hallway proved Suge Knight could bleed. One Peace Summit saved 2 rhyme giants from following Pac and Biggie Smalls. And one $1.5 million Zoom settlement reminds us that even the loudest bully can't outrun consequences forever. If Knight can pivot from threats to payouts without leaving his cell, what pivots might Cube be plotting from his Hollywood office? Drop your theories, because in hip-hop, the next round is always loading.